Hi guys, it's Alan, and welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. So today I'm going to do another tag video, this one the TBR Book Tag. I was tagged by Kieran over at KD Books, who, if you haven't checked out his channel, is working his way through like every single book that's ever won the Man Booker Award, which I learned from him is like the Pulitzer Prize for the UK. So go check his channel out. So these questions are going to be all about my TBR list or TBR bookshelf. I haven't actually looked at the questions either, and I forgot what they were from when he watched them. I have them here, so I'm just going to kind of work through them reading off my computer. So question number one is, I'm not even synced up. Hang on. Question number one is, how do you keep track of your TBR pile? Okay, so I have a dedicated shelf. It's never actually in these videos. It's actually over here. Hold on, I'm gonna have to move it. I'm operating it remotely so I can see the thing on my computer. I'm gonna have to turn it. Hold on. You see that? I'm gonna make it in focus right there. Whoop, whoop. There you go. You see that tag right there, right underneath Calvin and Hobbes and Smoker and the really old Shakespeare books? That is this right here is my TBR list. Guy Jin and Taipan aren't really. Ooh, can I lean in here? Oh, you can't even see me. Hold on. There we go. Gaijin and Taipan on the end are, yeah, they're on my TBR eventually, but Shogun is. And this is just my fiction stuff. I've got some nonfiction over on the other side, but oh my gosh, this video is a disaster. You can't even see me half the time. So that's how I keep track of my TBR pile, is that shelf right there. Okay, so question number two. Is your TBR mostly in print or ebook? It's all print. I don't read ebooks. I had a Kindle for a couple years and read some books on the Kindle, and then I lost my Kindle, and I just took that as a sign that I shouldn't read ebooks. I don't really like being on devices and reading stuff. I like the heft of a book in my hands. I don't know, I like the tactile feeling of having a book in my hands. And I also like having some physical proof that I own a book. I'm the same way with video games. Like, Sony is coming out with a PS5 that is digital only. It has no disk drive, so you only download games. I'm not about that life. Like, I like to have physical copies of games. I don't like having everything exist in the digital world. That's just not me. Maybe it's just because I'm old, and I'm just an old guy who doesn't love technology, but it's all physical books, all physical books. Question three, how do you determine what book on your TBR to read next? Well, a couple things. One, if I'm reading a series, I try to include the next one in that series on the TBR. Otherwise, I do one of two things. One, I ask my wife to look at them and like, hey, which one would you like to see a video about? I know when she does that, she's never gonna pick like the ones that are about fighting or violence, because that's not my wife's thing. So I can't just rely on my wife, or else I'd never really read any military books. And so I also have just a random way of doing it where I just roll a tennis ball at some D&D minis and have a sticky note underside them. It's super complicated way of just randoming it, but I didn't want to just, you know, draw a name out of a hat or do the same thing that other people were doing. So I thought this was sufficiently weird enough, and that way I can't really complain if it's something I want to read. We rolled the ball. There we go. Done. Number four, what book has been on your TBR the longest? Hang on. Okay, that's gonna be The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's a big old book. It's the first one in the Lucanian saga. I gotta grab it. Oop, it's the first book in the Licanius trilogy. I haven't read it. My wife bought me this book like almost 2 years ago, and I just haven't gotten around to reading it. Part of it is the size of the book. I don't like lugging big books like that around. And the other part is I've just heard mixed things about it. I haven't really heard anybody super rave about it, so I'm kind of like, on whether or not I want to read it. I will, it's just getting shunted to the bottom of the pile generally. Number five, name a book that you recently added to your TBR. I guess one of the more recent ones is Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. This is the first book of the Powder Mage trilogy. I love muskets, and I love that kind of, I love it when they mix like muskets and magic. that kind of Napoleonic War feel. I've read a series called The Shadow Campaigns, which is really the Napoleonic Wars with magic. This is kind of similar. I think it's like the French Revolution with magic. And it helps that this dude on the front, like, I don't know who did this cover art, but it's awesome looking. Like, I would pick this up just for the cover. But this guy looks like Joel from the video game Last of Us. And if you ever played that game, you love Joel, and I love Joel. So I'm going to be picturing this guy talking with a southern accent the entire time, like he's Joel from Last of Us. So that's just how I do. Number 6, name a book that is on your TBR specifically because of its beautiful cover. I don't have a ton of books that have really beautiful covers. I actually hate hardbacks, and they're generally the ones that have the really beautiful covers. As I said in my very first TBR video, the Iron Ship, I just love this combination of colors and this, you know, kind of steampunk ship with its blue smoke that matches the color of the water. I really, really like this cover. I need to read this book, but I really like this cover. So that's why it's here. Number 7, name a book on your TBR that you never plan on reading. I mean, it may be The Shadows of What Was Lost if I keep adding stuff to it. Otherwise, TBR, I mean, I don't really put stuff in the TBR pile that I don't want to read. Maybe, I don't know, in that TBR pile, there's not really anything there that I wouldn't want to read. Shadows of What Was Lost may be the closest. Shogun is a fantastic book, but I just don't know when I'm going to get around to reading it again. I've read Shogun 3 times, so I'm not really sure. It's 1,200 pages. It's hard to commit to books that big. So we'll see. Maybe Shogun. But if you haven't read Shogun, go read Shogun. One of the best historical fiction books I've ever read. Number 8, name an unpublished book on your TBR that I forgot the question. Name an unpublished book on your TBR that you're excited for. This is a weird question. Is this like a book that isn't out yet that I put on my to-be? I wouldn't put a book that isn't out on my to-be read. Like, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't think to do that. I guess people do that. I wish I could say it's Rhythm of War, because that's what everyone is saying that they hope to read. I have never read a Brandon Sanderson book. No, God! Ever. And I've been reading fantasy my whole life, and I know that I speak heresies right now. Please don't excommunicate me from the community. I'm working on it. But I don't know. I think Django Wexler has another adult fiction book coming out this year. So maybe that. I like The Shadow Campaigns, but I don't read YA, and that's really what he's working on now. Noun of Noun and Noun. I think it's like City of Smoke and Steel, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, maybe the thing by Django Wexler. I don't know. Number 9, name a book on your TBR you feel like everyone's read except you. Easy. Boom! Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I just finished saying I've never read a Brandon Sanderson book. I finally bought one, Mistborn, and I do want to read it. How many pages do you think this is? Seriously, this looks like it's 300, maybe 400 pages. It's like 650. I don't know what kind of like Bible paper or tissue paper they're using, but this is it. Everyone's read Mistborn. Everyone has read every Sanderson book except for me. I'm late to the party. I feel bad, but I'm gonna read this. But I hear it's good, and so I don't want to start it until I'm done with Malazan, because what if I want to read books 2 and 3? So it's Mistborn, 100% easy. Number 10, a book on your TBR that everyone recommends to you. It's going to be Mistborn. It's the same. I'm having a hard time finding people who read the same kind of weird books that I do. Like, there's not a ton of military fantasy that I see talked about, and I have a bunch of those on my like Amazon wish list, but I never hear anybody talking about them. So it's probably Mistborn, because I haven't read a lot of the popular stuff. Trying to catch up. Took a break from reading for like 5 years. I don't know what I was doing instead, but yeah, I missed a lot in that 5 years. So trying to catch up. It's Mistborn. Everyone recommends it to me. 11, name a book on your TBR that you're dying to read. I mean, I'm going to say Promise of Blood again, because again, muskets and magic is right in my, it's right in my wheelhouse. Also, Crippled God, which is book 10 of the Malazan book. On my July TBR here, I've got Dust of Dreams, which is book 9, and as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to read book 10, Crippled God, so I can be done with the Malazan series proper. And not that I don't like Malazan, because I love Malazan, but the size of the books are just hindering my ability to read anything else. So I'm super excited to read Crippled God, to see how Erikson wraps up this 10-book epic that he began with Gardens of the Moon, and also so I can read books maybe that aren't 1,300 pages at a clip. And finally, how many books are on my TBR? Man, I don't know. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
1, 2 seconds, 3, 4, 5.
What are you doing?
6.
23 as it stands now. On my Amazon wish list of books, there's like 90. So, but I don't own those. I don't put them on my TBR until I own them. So at any rate, that's my TBR. It's fantasy books. I mean, that's pretty much exclusively what I read, except for like some ancient history stuff. If you like this video or any of my other videos, consider giving it the thumbs up and then subscribing so you can see my other videos as they come out. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.